Derek Sinnott from Lean Construction Ireland, and I'm delighted to welcome you to the second webinar in this three-part series delivered in collaboration with Build Digital. Just a tiny intro to Lean Construction Ireland, if people are not familiar. We're a national member-led organisation that helps construction and broader built environment sector improve productivity and project delivery through lean thinking and practice. So this a webinar, which is about what good adoption looks like in practice, is really, really valuable in terms of the whole built environment and construction community. Just to give you a little bit of an indication, we are going to have a presentation or demonstration by Robert Moore, which will follow on into a conversation piece, and then we'll also be able to take your questions and answers and try and answer some of your questions. So by all means, put your questions into the question area. Following on from webinar one, today's session focuses on what good adoption looks like in practice. Having established why information management is strategically important, this webinar explores how these principles are applied effectively in real projects or across organizations and with delivery teams. Our main presenter is Robert Moore, who's project lead for Build Digital project. Robert will build on the business case foundation of the first webinar and demonstrate how good adoption is structured, proportionate and aligned with organizational maturity and project needs. So he's going to cover three main topics and demonstrate each of them. They're going to be around information management, BIM adoption and implementation roadmap, the information management and BIM adoption strategy, which will include worked examples of a case for local authorities, which will be of particular interest to them, and also around information management BIM adoption plan involving a worked example for a small and medium enterprise. So that should be very interesting as well. So these examples illustrate how organizations can move from intent and strategy into practical, reputable implementation. So really want to understand the impact here as well. So today, Robert will be joined by Mark Evans, who is associate at JV Tierney & Co., who is from a BIM and digital lead and a member of the BIM committee of the Association of Consulting Engineers of Ireland. Mark brings a consulting engineer's perspective on adoption, drawing on live project experience to demonstrate what works in practice and how organizations can adopt BIM and information management in a way that adds real value rather than unnecessary overhead, which is fantastic. We're going to move after the demo piece, as we say, into that conversation where I'll join in, and when that will flow into the Q&A piece as well. So I'll hand back over to Robert, who will take it from here.
Thanks a million, Derek. Thanks for the introduction. Yeah, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go follow on, as we said, from the demos that we had last time, and we're going to just look at them going forward. So just to start off on this, I'm going to just have a quick kind of introduction to where we're going. And I suppose this is following on that what we're talking about, what good digital adoption looks like. And again, it's leading on in the series that we're doing about BIM adoption. And we're looking at strategic and planning of BIM adoption on this one, on this particular webinar. So again, to just look at Build Digital and where we sit. So these supports are around the adoption supports, and they fit in our Digi Adopt hub. Our other Digi Implement hub has our supports on our information management plans, which are around implementing information management at the project level. And then also we have Digi Innovate, which is looking at powering the future and tools that will assist in the digital journey in the future. So I suppose just to talk about today and give an overview today, and it's really good that we have Derek for Lean Construction here with us today, because in a way, really, we are looking at lean processes here, and it's coming back to the basic principles as Plan, Do, Check, Act. And that's so important for when you're doing anything within a project, that you have that process in place, that there is a plan for what you're going to do, and there's a checking process within it. It's good project management to go like that. All the capital works management framework and ISO 19650 part 2 have a lessons learned stage. So it's around checking what you're doing and acting. And it's really important to have that lessons learned. That's not really a lessons identified but not yet learned session, which sometimes can be. So like it is obvious. We've been talking about this for years. It's like failing to plan is planning to fail. Everybody is here at that, and also stupidity is doing the same thing and expecting different results. So it is common sense to look at this process of having a plan to go forward. And I suppose really what I wanted to do was kind of look back on webinar 1 when we talked about the business case, and we needed to consider what needs to do, and there is investment needed. And I suppose the two things we're talking about today requires that investment. It's what organizations need to do. And unfortunately, this will fall under unbillable work, which is sometimes what is shied away from organizations, that they need to go into that process of defining their processes and procedures, and then checking and an ongoing supporting within that. So it's important that we recognize that there's a value in that, even though that it might not be billable. There's a value for the organization, and it should be done. Really, it's as simple as that. So I suppose really what we're looking at is turning intent into reality. And then the first thing that I'm going to look at now is actually the roadmap for adoption and implementation. So again, I'm just going to show it's done as an A3, deliberately done as an A3 to allow people to be able to access it and have it as a short, simple document to be done. And again, it's divided into quadrants. So I'll just go through the quadrants again, and I suppose talk about the areas that's in it. I suppose it's really showing again the roadmap, the time frame with the BIM adoption for the milestones for the mandate, and talking about in 2028 all projects should be according to the BIM mandate. And it's looking at what's trying to do is it's trying to build capacity, and it's talking about organizations with early capacity and developing capacity and advanced capacity. And I suppose that's understandable that organizations are at early capacity and they need to build that capacity. So if we look again at the diagram here, we look at the 4 core elements of the mandate and look at elements that would be identified within that stage of capacity. So within early capacity, within that ISO 19650, you will be having you may have a basic common data environment, simple nailing rules, limited role definition, and no formal info plan in place. But really what we're trying to do is developing capacity, and that's where we kind of see where the mandate sits. It's about having that there is some good capacity built up within the organization, a structured common data environment workflow. So it's not just a technical solution, you also understand the workflow for that information, define roles and milestones, and container-based approach is required on that, and that's trying to go over then to the advanced capacity, and that's looking at the full IFC capacity and automation within your CDE and validation as well. That'll be covered. Within the uniclasses, you may not have uniclass codes in your early capacity, but really you want to develop that into that you are using uniclass codes consistently over the majority of the codes, that you're looking at that linking the data. And that's really what's important there with uniclass, is that you can link different data sources on the same object or the same object type with using the uniclass. So it's a very strong way of doing it. And then also to go into the full uniclass, that you're actually using uniclass to the full potential, and looking at then how is that going to drive automation and specs and other things there. Then go on into the IFC component in it, and I suppose really within early capacity, there probably is no IFC used within your workflow. That it'd be very limited. Within the advanced capacity, it's very important to reach into the IFC use cases there. Like validation is a really good use case there for IFC that we should be looking around. And I know people don't like the word use COBie, but like COBie is a subset of IFC as well, and there is a place for that at the moment. I know it is kind of a common denominator to come in to let people have that asset information that may be useful, and also as well as that sometimes within projects, a vendor is picked and there's an agreement between all the appointed parties that that single vendor would use. And that's to aid interoperability, but in a way, really, that kind of limits that limits people's use of software. That there might be a better software for the task, and because of this, that's limited around that. And we need to think about that. That we don't want to limit design teams use the best tools because there's an interoperability, and IFC is one of them ways of actually dealing with this. And then also in the advanced capacity is to look at how IFC then can be used in operations or used as a record base then for what's going on in the project. And then I suppose the last element then is International Cost Management Standard, which looks into like carbon around how costs are calculated within a cost and carbon. I suppose in early capacity is really looking at costs, and I suppose in the way the mandate has actually specifically looked at cost and carbon will be something that probably coming in the future. But it's good to have that there's one international standard that's now being defined for the reporting, which means that all the supply chain knows what they're going to be working towards and just can start working towards that. And then I suppose it's around having that there's dynamic cost outputs and linking that into automation as well. So that's really important around getting that digital workflows that there's one classification or a known classification and codification for which use case you're using it for. So I suppose like it's if you're using information for costs, it's really useful to use that the information international cost management system. But if you want to classify something to identify the object, the uniclass is the one that's suitable. And there's nothing barring you having an object classified with both classifications. So I'm just going to move back onto this here. And just looking down on this, it kind of on the top it talks about people, process, and technology, and that's really what we need to think about here. That it is that three strands that come together that gives you the outputs that you want. This is not one of them. One in isolation will fail. Two will be a stronger approach, but you really do need the three of them to work. And it is about bringing that together and then three pillars together to have a successful adoption of it. So looking down on this, what we have is the information management adoption roadmap organization level. So it really, that's kind of what we're looking at. And we've kind of made the distinction here when we talk about adoption, we're talking about within the organization, and we talk about information implementation, we're talking about implementing on a project level. So that's how we're kind of looking at it, and we've concentrated around that terminology within the hubs of DigiAdopt and DigiImplement. So just to kind of look at the process here on how we define the steps that you could go through or should go through. I suppose really what we think is really important is it's really important that that there's a buy-in from senior leadership, and also that there is a group, a committee there in place to actually make things happen. So we kind of see that's the first thing, and I suppose I'll go into more details of these 8 steps when I actually show you the strategy, because that actually links directly into the 8 steps as well. So it kind of you'll see the linkage between the roadmap and the strategy within the 8 steps. So I suppose that one, it's about having that senior leadership buy-in, and also that you have that working group there to do it. It's around setting the vision of what wants to be achieved within your organization, and what elements is believed to add value, and it's what is that vision for the organization. And then also to look at the maturity within your organization of where is the organization at the moment, what is available, what assets are available for the organization to use, or supports or resources are available for the organization to use. And then develop the approach of what you're going to do. Is there's different strategies you can take for implementing information management, and it's to just look at what is that strategy that you're going to take, or approach that you're going to take within it. And then also look at what documents or governance or policies or technologies that's in place or needed within your organization. So just to do an audit of that and then understand what's outstanding, where is there some gaps in that as well. And then the resource planning and building capacity as well. Building is really important to look at how you're going to move forward within the training and what you're doing. And then it's really important that this is a team effort, that you need to involve your stakeholders within this, that your supply chain also needs to get involved and help along with this way of working. And then it's really important, as we talked about, is the check process. Is to look back and to check how you're going. And then when we understand how you're going, what actions do you need to change, or what tweaks do you need to change within the plans? So in a way, really, they're quite similar, what needs to be done from a client perspective, and then some of the supply chain perspective as well. There's kind of some slight differences here within this around what you need to do, but it is really that there's a lot of similarities in that what needs to be done within this. It's around the organization, understanding what building that capacity within it, and each of them things are really relevant for both of them. We also noticed that you don't need to go to all 8 steps, that when you're within step 5, there's an opportunity here to transfer it down into your implementation within the project. So you can look at that. And also to note that there is actually hyperlinks on the supports as well. So if you do want to download the supports that we have within the Build Digital Exchange, you can do it through these hyperlinks as well. And there's other hyperlinks to the exchange. So I'll go and have a quick look at this, and I'm not going to dwell too long on this, because I suppose really this roadmap here is talking about the implementation, and it actually aligns perfectly with ISO 19650. So I suppose there's a lot of information there on ISO 19650 of what needs to be done. So I'll just quickly go over it. These are the steps of it. Is assess the need. Now there's slightly differences here, because really what it is, the client needs to understand what they need, but the supply chain needs to be readying itself. So when they get them requirements, so it's around that the supply chain is anticipating what will come from the client or in bids, and then they'll anticipate to ready themselves for having the information for that. Like, I suppose when you do get a tender, when a tender does come back to you, come to an organization, like, the organization should have its information production methods and procedures already defined. So that can be something that can be done before you actually get a tender. It's not when you get the tender, that shouldn't be the trigger point for that. It should be done beforehand. And then I suppose looking then in at that you have your tender response on that, and then there's the BEP that comes back, to exchange information requirements, and then confirming the appointments, the mobilization. Now the mobilization actually does have similarities between what we're trying to do now, because this is mobilizing on a project, but really what we're going to go and talk about is mobilizing on an organization and production of the information, looking back on that and the quality of the information then, and obviously close out as a lessons learned. But we also say that there should be a continuous feed onto this, that information management doesn't just stop at the end of this finishing the job. It goes into operations, it transfers into operations and maintenance process then again on that. So I suppose that's kind of really where you're going in on the cycle. And then the final thing is just some definitions there on that. So I suppose I'm just going to go back into the PowerPoint there and moving on to this. So just a recap on that, and the roadmap is looking at the Irish Mandate timeline. It's around the building capacity, it's around the people, processes and technology, and then you have the information management BIM adoption roadmap, organization level, and then you have the information management BIM implementation roadmap, project level, and then their acronyms. And that's really what's there in that roadmap. So it's a simple little roadmap that should be easy enough for people to use. So then just to move forward into then what we're going to do is I'm just going to show you the strategy document and go I've run through that, and you can see how the titles here link back to what we already showed on the roadmap. And I suppose this page here, to just look at this page, it actually is the same in most of our plans, and most of our plans are done in a spreadsheet, and we have the same kind of project management in the front. And then for all the plans that I show later on today and next week, they all have the glossary and then the references there as well. So there's a lot of information on it. And then there's a guide then to the individual element itself. So it talks about the steps match the plan, the roadmap, and then there's kind of a really clear step-by-step guide of how you're meant to do it. So there's quite a lot of information here in this guide for when you start. So I'm just moving on in this one, and I've deliberately used a worked example for my local authority. I said there's no point in showing you a blank one and then move back in and then show the worked example. I just said I'll just move into the worked example. So really what wanted to hear in the mandate, the first step is a mandate statement, and we are actually looking at producing a template for this, for a mandate statement within an organization. Basically, it's just give that senior leadership buy-in, the follow on from when you show them the business case to say, well, yes, we support it, and it gives that statement there. It's usually important to have a project sponsor, which is somebody senior within the organization, usually a senior leadership team. They might have now, they don't need any information management BIM knowledge, but you just need to have authority within the organization. And then it's good to have a champion, a BIM champion, an information management BIM champion there. Again, that person doesn't need to have a huge amount of information management knowledge. Good project management knowledge is essential for that role, and to look at this as a project management. And then again, to get a set of people to come and do this. And I know that one of the questions was who should be in that group. It's really anybody within the organization, and usually from every department. You want somebody from ICT, you want somebody from procurement, you want somebody from any of your engineering or architectural departments, but you also, you want the administration there as well, because it is a change management of how you use information and how corporately the organization work. So to move on from that, is the next thing is to look at the vision, to vision where you want to get your organization and to move forward within it. So it's usually looking at what's your strategic objectives, understanding the benefits, and then understanding some KPIs from it. So it's kind of important that the organizations think about what is the benefits they want to achieve, or what do they want to do in the short, medium, and long term. And then what the next thing to do is actually to look at the existing maturity within the organization. So where are you on people, processes, and technology, and data is a good subcategory also to use within there to understand what's going on within your organization. So you kind of, it's just a kind of a 360, a good 360 in your organization to see where you are and on what levels they're at, and anything you note on that. And so I suppose looking at your adoption strategy, I suppose there's different ways around to do this. I suppose there's a different way of doing it. And we've kind of looked at different ones here, like Pathfinder initiatives, which would be to pick something like your naming and do your naming, get that right, roll that out in your projects. Maybe pick something else, that your common data environments, get that working with your naming, roll that out. So you're basically looking at initiatives within the organization, and then projects instead of a pilot first might be a way that you might be forced into doing it because you actually have a project that is captured in the BIM mandate milestones that you need to go for it and do the project. Obviously there's risks, and there's risks with all of them. The Pathfinder initiative can be slow to roll out. There can be a lot, you can take a lot of risks by doing a lot of things at once, and obviously what is a faster way. And portfolio ride, again, there's kind of a way of getting it within the organization. You're going to take a lot of pain, but it should be over a shorter period of time, or then take a hybrid approach and then look at how you're going to define that out. So how it works best for your organization. So it's really important to think of what way you're going to approach this. And then looking then into the government policies and technologies, it's kind of looking at what documents do you have, you might not have, or you know that you'll need, and to look through them and see on the Moscow system of must have, should have, could have, won't have. So it's really good to look at that and then appoint somebody that owned that within it, and then also to have a look at your technologies that you have at the moment. You might have a technology you're currently using, but you might need to reevaluate it as well. And I suppose that leads on to our next webinar, and the number 3 webinar will talk about evaluating technologies and other things then. Then moving on onto this, onto the resources, and this just looks at your people within it, and your capacity within your organization, the skills to have, the training that required, and how you're going to do it. So it's around doing that. That's something that your organization needs to look at, is upskilling your people there. And then finally, your stakeholders, that you need to start engaging with your stakeholders to make them aware of this change management or change within your organization, and have them they work with you. And then finally, obviously, to monitor again on your continuous improvement. So to work through that and make sure that that works well. So I suppose that's just a quick one there on that. And just to go through it again at a high level view, is establish your organization mandate, set your vision, evaluate your digital maturity, structure the structure you're using for adoption, put the governance in place, plan resources and build capacity, engage with your stakeholders and track progress. They're the kind of things that we went and looked at on it. So then to go and to move on to the adoption plan. So let's just look at the adoption plan. And really, again, as I said, here the same cover sheet is the exact same. Everything down here is actually the same as them all. You just have it in another place. And then again, the guidance, as it was shown within the guidance on it, goes down through that. So it just goes around how it should be filled. But the plan itself is a really simple document. It's a very, very simple document. And basically, it's an action register. Really, that's all that it is. It goes through the things that you need to do and puts them down as actions. It talks about the steps, the people, the detail of that. Then also talks about the task, the approach that you're going to take to task, the owner, what is it required, the priority, start date, end date, dependencies and status. So that's really what it is. And I suppose we use the building contractor here as this worked example, but it just goes down through where people think they need to be and what needs to happen on it. So it just this is kind of a list there, what would be suggested, things that could be done. Obviously, organizations will have to put in their own approach to what they'll do and how they'll define that. But that's really all that the plan is. It's an action register on it. And I'll just move on to the summary of that. So I suppose really what it was around categorizing the activities on the people, process, technology and data, and the clear actions and tasks, outline the approach to be undertaken, and assign responsibility, agree priorities, and set realistic. Realistic is a really key thing here, that it should be realistic, your stop dates, and then also on your monitoring that progress to make sure that you're keeping track that things, that the status is being updated, and identify the required supports for that. So that was kind of a quick one on it. And I suppose just to go back into kind of an overview of what we've done, planning comes before doing. I think that's really important for organizations, that you do need to plan, and sometimes that's what happens. Organizations just go straight into it, and that can be risky. That can be really risky, that you don't have that structured plan in place, and it can create rework, it can create frustration within the organization. So the next thing is prepare your organization before an Irish BIM mandate milestone impacts your project. So I suppose really that's key. That's key. Organizations shouldn't be waiting. If organizations plan to do work, like if it's a client and it's a government client, if you're doing small projects at the moment, the mandate will hit you. So just get ready for it now. If you're a supply chain organization and you plan to do government works, there's no way out of this. You need to get ready for that mandate coming to your organization. Defining your processes take time. But it underpins success. And also, as well as that, the problem with this is defining your processes is considered non-billable work. And that can be a real problem within organizations, that they're really very shy of non-billable work within the organization, but it just needs to happen. And Preparing enables compliance with the Irish BIM. This preparation implies compliance with the Irish BIM manual, which is really important. Like if you do this, if you do these steps, you will be ready. You will be ready to get ready for the project. And planning in your organization is similar to mobilization in the project level. So there is a kind of step there that you can see. And I suppose more to think about that is creating that plan before you get into it, because I think that's probably a step that's understood really in delivering to ISO 19650 Part 2. It's a mobilization, and people don't really don't really take that step seriously, but it's really important. But you can have a lot of the preparatory work for that step done within your organization. So you're just testing it with a different team, a different design team. And I suppose Build Digital provide the supports to help you deliver this change within your organization. We've a large amount of supports on our website that's there for your organization to work with. And I suppose just to look at that, here's a quick link to the supports that we showcased during the series, but there's lots of other supports there as well. So I suppose we'll just move on to the panel discussion, and I'll hand you back to Derek Sinnott there, who will then chair the panel discussion.
Thanks, Robert. Well done. A lot of information there. I'll just ask Mark to join us as well. But while Mark is joining, just one of the things we discussed it, or you said it at the start, Robert, about people, process, technology. I just have one question here I'm going to ask you straight up that's come in, and it's really about, I suppose, focused on the people. We have a large number of attendees today. People are at different stages of the journey. Some people are just starting off. And one of the questions that came in, right, and I'll give you 30 seconds to kind of just sum it up. It says, is it contractual? What's the mandate kind of piece? Just to set the scene in 30 seconds again, for those who are new to this.
Yeah, it's a really good question there on that. So it is contractual, but what you have to think about is the mandate doesn't specify you have to do something. So the mandate doesn't specify a 3D model. The mandate specifies a process. So in a way, the Capital Works Management Framework is a process, and ISO 19650 is a process as well. So it's around that process being done for the project, but it really does start with the client. So the client can't do a quick one-liner, which I've seen many a time. This project is BIM level 2 according to ISO 19650, and then step back, mic drop. Which that statement is incorrect, because there's no such thing as level 2 when you go combined with ISO 19650. But it needs the clients to actually go and do that preparation work and define what their requirements are, and then specify their requirements in the way of ISO 19650. Okay. So it should be done that way.
I might bring Mark in on that, and I'll reintroduce Mark here as well, because a number of people joined just after the start. So Mark Evans is associate at JV Tierney and Co., where he's the BIM digital lead, and he's also a member of the BIM committee of the Association of Consulting Engineers of Ireland. I suppose how the question there, people are at different stages of the journey, Mark, in terms of what are you seeing on the ground? You're obviously well involved. Where do you see that people are at in terms of understanding just at the start of this, before we get into the detail of what was discussed today?
Cheers, Derek. Yeah, look, we started off in doing BIM about 15 odd years ago, back in 2010. There wasn't a huge amount of information or structure back then. It was sort of before PAS 1192 and all that sort of stuff came out. It is something that sort of was slow to progress, you know. Standards have since come out. 19650 was a really good standard, I think, in terms of putting a structure on how we manage information. And I think the work there that Build Digital have done with these templates is really good to sort of roll that out to people. There's loads of information that's out there on the internet, on webinars, events like this, to give people an understanding. I guess it was a big step for us when we started into it. BIM was something that was it was there before that, but it was something that was a big step. It was something that we weren't used to. You're stepping outside of your comfort zone. You still probably see an awful lot of that where there's people who were, I guess, nervous to take that step. It's the unknown, I guess. But the thing is that it's here. It's like, digital workflows. We have AI starting to evolve. There's automation, all this sort of thing. So really, it's something that can't be avoided. I think that the biggest thing is to just start the journey, to take the first steps. That'd be my advice, I think.
I suppose from my perspective, Lean Construction Ireland, what we want to do is, help deliver projects better, faster, in that collaborative approach, make sure there's flow and predictability in terms of what we do. And that might maybe guide a little bit of the conversation then as well, Robert and Mark, maybe together, in terms of, there's an awful lot of information there, Robert, that you presented. A lot of thought gone into it, a lot of structure to it. I really like the PDCA approach and the A3 approach in terms of how you've presented it as well. I suppose if we're setting the direction, how effective is this type of structured approach how in helping organizations clearly define their objective scope, priorities, etc.? What's the reality in terms of the adoption on the ground?
Yeah, no, that's a really good one. So I did implement ISO 19650 in an organization before I started Build Digital, and there was none of these supports here. There was nothing. So I had to start from scratch and then kind of go, what should be done? And I suppose looking back on what I did, now looking back on this, if this guidance was available for me back then a number of years ago when I were doing it, it would have been so useful. It would have been so useful to go and say, well, here's kind of a roadmap there within it. And like, I suppose I kind of felt my way, but like, to be honest, right, in the end up, most of them things or most of them processes was done to a certain level, but there was a long learning process to understand that they needed to do that. So I suppose that was, and I'd be interested to see what Mark would for that as well, that he obviously did that in his role, what was used.
Yeah, I'd agree, Rob. I think we were probably in the same boat where we started off, and I think it was the same port that there was very little information there. There was very little structure there. So I guess there's new standards, new BIM standards coming out all the time, and they're getting evolved and they're getting changed as sort of industry changes, knowledge builds, and the clients and project needs change. Having a structured approach, structured documents, it's great. I mean, I think, Rob, the plan that you've set out there with, is a good way to start to sort of set out at a high level what sort of documents we want to create, what sort of workflows you want to create. Then your strategy is going to give more detail in that. I think the biggest thing is having it documented. When you're making it up yourself, there's an awful lot of learning, and you're sort of learning, and then you're making mistakes. And I guess having this already there means that you're not going to make the same mistakes. There's still going to be issues. It's not going to, it's not going to run seamlessly, but it's putting a lot more structure on it, which is going to give you less issues down the line.
I think that's part of it too, Mark, in terms of what you said. Mistakes will be made. Sometimes we wait for everything to be perfect before we start, and it's even that PDCA and rapid learning kind of piece. One of the things that Robert touched on earlier as well is in terms of the different stakeholders who are involved. This is here as a template. There's a lot of information, but I think everybody needs to be brought into the room, and that open discussion. So there's a collaborative first of all interpretation of what this means for the business and how it is, and maybe moving on to once we understand it from the requirements perspective, but from a business perspective, and then moving into that deployment strategy phase and plan. So I might ask you, have you gone through that process? Have you seen that work? Is the deployment strategy a good approach to take, really?
Well, I suppose like it is that it's like it comes back to this, is you have to make a plan. If the plan is bad or good, sometimes it doesn't really matter, because you'll catch that in your continuous improvement. So that's the thing that's important. The important thing is not to be running straight into doing the project. And like, it's okay to get things wrong. It's okay. But like, what you need to do is, it's not okay to get it wrong twice. like you shouldn't be doing the same thing. And look, I suppose really every project comes into that as well, that you're doing it. So it's around that. It's around that what we've done here is now we've put a framework for organizations that are not coming out with a blank sheet and saying, I've got, and especially with public sector bodies there that might not have been used to this, because and then next thing they hire somebody that from the private sector, and it just gives them that starting point to say, look, this is the things you should think about. And like, one of the things that I kind of am very firm about is actually the organization level mandate. I think that's a really, really important starting stone for this, that everybody knows that there's something going to happen. And we've got that senior leadership buy-in. So it is about that. It's about doing that. And look, really, in a way, for me, it was important to divide the strategy and the plan, because I think, to be honest, right, sometimes you have strategies and no plans, and sometimes you have plans and no strategies. So it's important that a strategy doesn't sit on the shelf there, that it's seen that it is an active document that should be brought up at the working groups meeting and seen that the plan, where are we now, what has been moved forward on this, and then use that as your action register to what you're going to do. So it's, and I'm going to actually ask you, I've used some terms there, action register and stuff like that. So to you, Derek, and it was no accident you're at this session either, because like, I've been very interested in lean construction for a good few years now, and I just see this as the two sides of the one coin, really. And I suppose, do you recognize lean processes there with what we've been advocating with it, or how would you see how they fit in with lean processes as well?
Well, absolutely. And that's what you actually, it's people, process, technology, lean, and elimination of waste, elimination of duplication. Standardization, I suppose, is a big, process within lean. Ultimately, we want to actually, make sure that the reliable flow of information is there. Because what I find an awful lot, without these standard processes and so on, people are going off inventing processes and standards themselves, kind of filling in the gaps. And I think this really sets the structure for that, a consistent and standardized approach, which invariably will reduce the amount of waste we have in the system and ultimately lead to better project delivery. So to me, it's all part of the one system, and it's that collaborative approach. I talk an awful lot about productivity and so on, and I was on a recent webinar, and productivity is there as a main driver of what we're trying to do, and this was really key to that within it. But I suppose it goes back to that. I'm going to throw it back again to Mark and yourselves, in a sense, is that paper to practice kind of approach. Now we have the strategy and the plan. How do we actually get it, for want of a better word, get to the shop floor, get to where value is added within the process? So how do you feel? I suppose I have a perspective in terms of this collaborative, bringing everybody on the journey, and actually that coaching piece. People accept, or people interpret, the information we provide at different times, at different times of a project cycle. We work in projects, so something might be presented today, but not necessarily required for the next project cycle. So how do we? It's embedding that within the culture of an organization is a big part of what we need to do as well. From your perspective, and particularly Mark, I suppose, that paper to practice approach, how do you feel that it's kind of worked?
The paper to practice one, that's the people side of this.
Yeah,
that's the people. It depends on the people, and it's trying to change the people, and that's the culture within the organization. That's a really hard one, because you can have the best plan in the world, and if you don't have the people, that's taken up. Sorry, Mark, I'll let you come in on that one as well.
Yeah, look, I think the biggest thing is starting. So like we said for the last question, the biggest thing is taking that first step, getting started into it. It seems like a big mountain to climb. When we started back 15 years ago, it was a big step. But you take it, and we started off with, maybe there was one or two of us in the office that was looking at BIM, that were going to, looking through the internet, seeing what you could find. Information grew, your BIM literacy grew, you had more of an understanding as you progressed what was required. As we were saying, you make mistakes, you sort of develop templates and go, actually, they don't work. You go back, you do your lessons learned. I think the benefit of having these templates set up is it's giving you that sort of foundation. It's giving you a really good base to start from, so you can put a plan in place. That's your overall, your overall vision of what needs to be done, and then the strategy then is where we're going to add more detail or more information. That can evolve, that can change. And then, like, as we, we start off with one or two people. Now everybody in the office is involved in BIM at some level. So we have 70 odd people in the company who are involved in BIM in some level. So it's from top management all the way down. So it's something that grows. Starts off one or two people and get an understanding, share that out. That's it. I guess use these templates to make your plan, get a strategy together, and go from there.
Excellent, thanks, Mark. I suppose as we move to the end of the session here, we'll look at some of the questions from the audience, and I'll ask if anybody else has any questions just to type them in there as well. I suppose just a bunch of few together. There's a couple of questions in there about how are these shared? Will they be shared? The A3 planner, which is your strategy and so on, Robert. So maybe just go back through that for a second.
Yeah, no, I'll answer these as quick as possible because we do want to let people out on time at 10 to. So yes, they'll be on our website. Anybody that has registered for the webinar will be, we will push out the videos and the slides and whatnot. Now, there's not much on the slides, as you can see, it's more the demos, but that will be pushed out to people that was registered. So you'll be informed, but it'll also be on our website.
One of the questions there, Robert, so are the support templates set up so they can be developed or edited?
Yes.
By each organization?
Yes, they should be.
And why do you think they should be?
Well, look, they should be filled in from the organization, and we've always said that any of our templates aren't mandatory. So to be compliant with the mandate, they're not mandatory. Now, we would recommend use, but we see organizations might be more advanced than what we're trying to do. We're looking at the mainstream majority. That's who we're trying to serve. So there could be some people that need to simplify it. Some people might need to complicate it. Feel free to do what you need to do. They're just a starting point. The only risk that you do with changing them, you lose that standardization because you're dealing with your supply chain. And if they have it different ways from different organizations, you lose the standardization. But we're not precious about it.
Okay, very good. Last couple of minutes then. I think some of these have been answered. Why do we need a strategy and a plan? Why not just jump straight into the plan? I think you covered that off a little bit earlier. Yeah. And then, will there be a webinar that focuses on the other standards required to deliver digital build strategy? Example 16739.
I think the simple answer is not planned at the moment. At the moment, all our webinars are to demonstrate supports that we've done. So we've none planned, but just to let you know, we are doing an event with NSAI and the infrastructure division in April, and we will be showcasing some of our information management plans, and we also will be talking about certification and the links between that for using our plans for certification.
Will each local authority or government department as a client need to be ISO 19650 certified, or will it be enough that each consultant's design teams are?
No, they don't. The certification isn't a requirement for the mandate. I actually rang Stephen this morning on this because I know that there was some kind of confusion about that because something he said. But no, it is not a requirement to be compliant. So you can still be compliant with that. It's advised it's recommended. It's a good thing to do. We do work with NSAI. We're looking at that our templates would be part of the pipeline or recommended processes for getting certification. But an organization will not be barred from going for mandate work if it's not certified. In a way, really, it's a kind of a funny thing. Why would a client get certified? There's no, like, you could say why a supply chain would get certified because it would simplify the procurement route. But what will certification do to a client? It is good for a client to do it to understand that they are actually right. I did have talked with somebody before about, really, I believe the project should be certified, but that brings a load of other complications. But I think that's better that the project is certified.
Okay, very good. That's a nice end to the session, I think, Robert. You covered an awful lot there today, and thanks very much to Mark for the contributions as well. So, as you were saying, I'll hand back over to you, Robert, just to close out.
I'll just close out and just thank everybody there for this, and just remind everybody that next Friday, the 30th of February, is when we're closing the survey. So please, can you try and get your survey in, responses in? We really would like to have a good feedback on that. So I would encourage everybody to come to the webinar to definitely fill in the survey. It's something that you do today. Would really appreciate to see a bump in the numbers today. So look, that would be much appreciated. And then just there's other 2 webinars, as I mentioned, that there was another webinar from the engineering series, and also the Construct Innovate series continues on. It goes on for 8 weeks. And then just the final webinar. Anybody here is already registered. You're automatically registered for all 3, but we look forward to seeing you in another week's time for the final webinar. So look, that's me. Thanks very much to everybody, and look forward to seeing you next week. And thanks again to Derek and Mark as well. It was a great conversation there.
Thanks, Robert. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Robert. Yep. Thanks, Derek.
Thanks, everybody.
Cheers all.